This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Canadians are being urged to fly their pride. All of the country's living former prime ministers have banded together to call on Canadians to fly the maple leaf in a show of solidarity against U.S. President Donald Trump's continued threats. As CBC's Felicia Adam reports, it has some stores working overtime to fill demand.
At the flag shop in Winnipeg, they've been hand-making Canadian flags for 30 years. And since the start of the week, the interest and calls have been non-stop.
Thank you for calling the flag shop. Samantha speaking.
We've had a huge demand, and there's been a flurry online when we're closed, and then as soon as the door opens, the phone's ringing with people asking for Canadian flags.
Matthew Hobson works at the store. He says an increase in demand for the Canadian flag ahead of Flag Day is not unusual, but this year they're trying to keep up.
People are motivated to show their pride in our country.
In a letter to all Canadians, 5 former prime ministers are calling on everyone to fly the red maple leaf this Flag Day after U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to the Canadian economy and its sovereignty.
Are you here for a Canada flag?
Of course.
Anne Harwood says she'll be hanging her flags with pride on Saturday.
I'm getting this one for my window, and then I'll just stick these out in a planter or whatever as well.
And she's not the only one. Greg Barker has never owned a flag of his own, but he says now it's time.
Canadians are always quietly patriotic, and maybe it's time to make a little more noise.
Aside from the flag shop, some MP offices have seen a demand for the flags they give out for free. Kevin Lamoureux was out shopping. His office ran out.
Members of Parliament are given a certain allotment of Canadian flags every year, and this is the first year in which we are actually running out of Canada flags well before Canada Day.
Lamoureux's office gets up to 75 flags each year. He says the increase in people wanting to raise the Canadian flag will send a strong message south of the border. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now, the push to support local extends beyond just shopping, but to travel destinations as well. Manitoba's Education Minister hopes school divisions will consider keeping field trips local instead of traveling south of the border. Tracy Schmidt was asked if she is advising schools to cancel travel plans to the U.S. in light of those trade tensions. Schmidt says she knows field trips and outings are important for child development, but she hopes divisions consider supporting local.
I would really encourage all school divisions and Manitobans across the province to consider how they might support our local economy and how they can spend their dollars and plan their travel right here in Manitoba.
Schmidt says in the current climate, it's important to support local businesses and industries. Rent increases are part of life for many tenants, but housing advocates want to soften the blow. They're calling on the Manitoba government to put a cap on hikes known as above-guideline increases. CBC's Josh Crabb reports.
Neil Kramer enjoys living in this 2-bedroom suite in West Broadway. What he's not a fan of are the 3 above-guideline rent increases he's been hit with since moving in.
I've been in this unit for 5 years. And in that time, our rent has gone from roughly $940 to now over $1,300.
The Manitoba government sets the annual rent guideline. This year, it's 1.7%. If landlords want an above-guideline increase or an AGI, they have to show their expenses to the Residential Tenancies Branch to prove they need it.
They're not that. AGIs are a way for profit margins to be increased on the backs of tenants.
A report released by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives suggests some of the increases are unjustified and unfair. One of the report's co-authors, Amanda Ems, argues there's not enough checks and balances.
Landlords are currently just allowed to make all of these costs and just hoist them onto the tenants.
To clamp down, housing advocates are calling on the Manitoba government to make legislative changes that put a limit on above-guideline rent increases. The government introduced legislation last fall, but the bill didn't become law. Avram Chirac with the Professional Property Managers Association of Manitoba says the costs landlords face to maintain their properties need to be taken into account if any changes are made.
We're no different than any other business or any other person. We face increases. We need to be able to deal with the increases.
Public Service Delivery Minister Mintu Sandu didn't make any promises, only that his department is reviewing the Residential Tenancies Act.
We are concerned what we are seeing, and we want to make sure when we review this act, we get the sides of both sides, renter's side and as well as landlord's side.
Kramer is hoping it results in more protection against rent increases.
If the new reality is you're paying, a couple $100 more every month, you got to find where that couple $100 is coming from.
The ones he's faced have impacted his ability to put savings towards buying his own home. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is calling on the province to address what they say is a systemic failure of the healthcare system. It says a program designed to support youth struggling with mental health is failing. CBC's Mike Arsenault has the details.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and councillors from Norway House Cree Nation are raising concerns about the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Centre. The space is designed to help youth struggling with mental health issues. AMC Grand Chief Kyra Wilson says there's a lack of accountability in the program.
The family and the nation have been trying to understand, what is it that MATC does, and if there's any issues in terms of services, who do they talk to? And there's no answers there.
Grand Chief Wilson's concerns come after a youth from Norway House Cree Nation was discharged from MATC after a 6-month stay. CBC isn't saying the name of the family or the youth to protect their identity. The youth was sent home without a diagnosis and was still struggling with severe mental health issues. Now their only support is a monthly telehealth appointment with a psychiatrist and a weekly virtual session with a therapist who doesn't live in the community. Norway House Cree Nation councillor Dion Clark is concerned other First Nation children may have fallen through the gaps as well.
There was always outstanding issues that we've always been concerned from First Nation leadership and community members that the level of care is not really adequate. And
Clark says he sent a letter to the Minister of Health last month addressing their concerns about the MATC program, asking for more accountability and an independent investigation.
We need to make sure that any system that is connected or working with our children and youth, there has to be oversight. We need to be able to ask questions and get those answers when we are asking.
Grand Chief Wilson wants to see independent oversight for the MATC, consistent services for First Nation communities, and funding for out-of-province services if they aren't available in Manitoba. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The province tells CBC it's been in touch with the family and are working to get them the care and support they need. A former bagel shop owner has apologized for his role in a high-level drug operation before he was taken away to serve his prison sentence. A judge has sentenced Chris Silva, the former owner of Hudson Bagels, to more than 4 years in prison. Silva was first charged in 2022. The Crown says they believe he was part of a high-level drug trafficking organization in Manitoba. Court heard the 49-year-old was seen receiving a gift bag with tens of thousands of dollars from one of the men believed to be running the drug ring. Cocaine and cash were later seized from his home. He pleaded guilty to possessing the proceeds of crime over $5,000 in September. A growing Winnipeg neighbourhood will soon welcome a new school to help with increasing student demands. The province is planning a new dual-track elementary school in Waverley West for kindergarten to grade 8 students. Prairie Point will soon house the school that will have both English and French immersion. It's anticipated to be able to handle 600 students and hold 74 infant and preschool childcare spots. The division says right now hundreds of students are bused to schools all over the area.
This new public school will be a milestone, allowing the Pembina Trails School Division to meet current and future enrollment needs in Waverley West, one of the fastest growing neighbourhoods in Winnipeg. This school will allow us to serve the thousands of students and their families in Waverley West and bring them home to a school in their own community.
That school is expected to open in September 2027. Let's bring in weather specialist Riley Lachak. And Riley, I love the pink tie. Don't love the lavender behind you once again.
Again, we're trying to channel the inner warmth a little bit.
Distract.
Yeah, okay. It's cold out there and we're looking at, I mean, I sound like a broken record when I say we're looking at the cold lasting, but that's what's happening here. So another night where we have extreme cold warnings in place for all of southern and central Manitoba doesn't mean it's not going to be cold in parts of northern Manitoba, just doesn't meet that extreme cold warning criteria. Wind chills near or colder than -40 in southern Manitoba overnight tonight. Temperatures themselves dipping into the -30s for some of us, and look at how far west this cold extends, right into Saskatchewan, into northwestern Ontario, so it's not just us that is battling this deep freeze. Skipping ahead to some of your morning temperatures tomorrow morning, looking at a wake-up temperature -33 in Brandon, into the -30s to the Red River Valley, into northwestern Ontario, and even some -35s on the map here for Dooley Lake. Factoring in the wind, yes, feeling colder than -40 for some of us. We'll talk about all this when I come back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why a Winnipeg teacher says he's working so hard to ensure his students aren't the targets of bullies. More on that straight ahead. Stay with us. A new workshop is teaching traditional crafts while encouraging women to build their own safe spaces in the community. Brandon's Women's Resource Centre is working to empower women by strengthening their connection to Indigenous culture. CBC's Chelsea Kemp brings us the story.
I like mine with a braid.
Yeah, traditional too, that meaning, you know.
You know, you have your ears open, you got your eyes open and your heart.
The women understand some of the healing we're doing, because when we're sitting in a circle making dream catchers and laughing, yeah, it seems like fun, but in a way we're really healing our souls. There's a lot of pain and trauma for our Indigenous people. This is what they need. They need their culture to heal.
When you get the web in there, that's when you actually feel more from it. Like, you know, like it feels like you're doing a spiritual thing, right? It was a nice way to be able to have a safe place and a safe environment to be able to share and meet other women and make friends.
On the land. Women were once known as like the leaders, and then we kind of lost that role. So now we're slowly bringing it back. Exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower women to get that strength again, to learn their cultures and bring it back to life so we can all learn together.
I hear women leaving our circle just talking about this group of women, and I hear women say to each other, "Oh, I'm glad you're here today," and I was hoping you would be here, and it's amazing to know that we've built this little community.
That's how it should be. That's how women should empower each other to build each other up and, encourage each other, because, we've come a long ways and we're all survivors.
As a kid growing up in Winnipeg, Lang Son was bullied, beaten up, and targeted with racist name-calling. That cruelty is part of what motivated him to become a teacher, who now protects his students from the same treatment. Son's story is the focus of a new documentary by students in the CREATE program at Sisler High School.
Well, there's the difference between Mr. Son and other teachers, that Mr. Son, you can connect with him. He is truthful, he is kind, he's incredible, just hands down greatest man that I've ever met, and I wish him like every piece of greatness in life.
I have never, ever, I have made it my mission to ever put a negative feeling or thought in a student's head. When I was in China, I was close to my mom until she did leave to Canada, and when I first moved, there were lots of kids that were very welcoming, but there were also other kids that were looking to just antagonize me. I remember in elementary, I still remember the face and the group, but they would relentlessly bully me. So there was a guy, and he would beat me up. He would pick fights. In the middle of winter, he would push me down to the snow and wash snow in my face, do face washing, just a lot of physical bullying. And I think I was walking back home from school, and somebody in a car just rolled down the window and just shouted a slur at me. It did make me in that moment just feel that I didn't belong. And the reason why I'm mindful of how I teach today to students is that they may have gone through that. Everything a teacher says is permanent, lasting, and anything that you say negatively could really, impact a student for the worse. You may even change the direction of a student's life with a couple of words.
Well, Mr. Son has meant a lot to me as a student and growing up, because he helped me improve my art and just made me feel like a better person and started making me realize that I wanted to become a teacher just like him, because I could see him the way he would treat his students, that they were like friends, but he was still a really good leader, and he could teach us new things every single day. And I admired that and inspired me to become an art teacher in my future.
So having such a sensitive childhood made me realize that all these people from different walks of life, I don't know their stories, but I'm going to treat them as if they've gone through the same rough path as I have.
some great messaging in that story. We always want to be kind to others, and I know we want to be kind to our weather people right now because
I feel very unpopular.
Riley is suffering the wrath when everybody comes in and is cold, and you try not to take it out on people, and you do it with such a smile, and you try to brighten everybody's day.
We're trying to think positively, and I keep trying to say that there will be, and there is maybe a little sliver of light at the end of the tunnel right now.
We're thinking warm, positive thoughts.
I do have some news tonight on when we start to see the cold starting to lift.
Okay.
It will take some time, but we'll get there.
We're getting there.
I want to talk about freeze times first because I showed you last time the wind chill values into the early morning hours. So these are your freeze times through the overnight hours into southern Manitoba. So for Winnipeg, for example, we're looking at that wind chill at about -42 overnight. And when you look at our wind chill scale here, we're looking at that frostbite on exposed skin setting in about 10 minutes or less for the Red River Valley overnight. But when you get into a place like Brandon, into the Riding Mountain region, into the higher elevations, into the parkland, that's when we start to get into these lower values here where we see frostbite on exposed skin potentially in less than 5 minutes. So we're looking at a dangerously cold night tonight, but like I said, there is a little bit of hope on the horizon. We'll get there, and I'll show you that in just a moment here. High pressure has really kept us sunny once again today. A few clouds out there, sort of some hit and miss cloud cover really across southern Manitoba into northwestern Ontario, and this extends even into parts of the States right now where we're seeing mostly sunny skies. This is what's hitting the Greater Toronto area, making its way into the Maritime provinces, some pretty significant snow. So, take your pick. Do you want heavy snowfall or do you want the extreme cold and sunny skies? That's sort of the trade-off that we're looking at here. And you can see this dome, this cold air just kind of rotating around as we get through the weekend, and that's going to stick with us. So some very cold temperatures into Saturday, and you'll see it just kind of, this blob just kind of sits there and just churns around as we get into Monday. And really doesn't go anywhere. It's just sitting there. And it will continue to be here for at least the next week into 10 days. So here's your 10-day temperature trend. And here's that light at the end of the tunnel that I was talking about. So, I mean, look at these numbers. These numbers now 11 degrees below seasonal for this time of the year, 12, 13 degrees by the time we get into Monday of next week. But look what happens. I mean, this is just one model's prediction of what happens once we get into the later part of the month here, but we start to get ourselves even back above seasonal for this time of the year by the time we get to the 22nd, 23rd of the month. Again, 10 days out, we'll keep an eye on this. These numbers will change between now and then, obviously, but just gives you a sense that the roller coaster ride that we're on and where we're headed. So there is a little bit of hope on the horizon. So I was talking last night about an area of low pressure that potentially could make its way through southern Manitoba as we get through the day on Thursday. High pressure, though, I think in this case will win out. So as we get through the day on Thursday, mainly sunny skies to start. And you can see these wind arrows here as we start to see that area of low pressure moving through. It doesn't really do anything. The high pressure just kind of wins in this case. Maybe we get a bit of cloud cover as we head Friday into the day on Saturday. So your forecast as we get through the next few days here, -19 on the way for Friday for Valentine's Day. Sunshine into the weekend, Brittany, and we're looking at temperatures staying cool into next week.
So hopefully your Valentine keeps you warm.
I hope so too.
Thanks, Riley. We have much more to come after the break. Stay with us. The Prime Minister met with European Union leaders and the head of NATO in Brussels. It's as U.S. President Donald Trump continues to make threats to allies' sovereignty, economy and defense. Ashley Burke reports.
The Prime Minister meeting with European allies in Brussels as they all face growing threats from Donald Trump.
The story between the European Union and Canada, it is the story of good allies and it is the story of trusted friends. And trust is very much needed in an unpredictable world.
Trudeau's talks included the mutual benefits of trade.
Trade agreements are clearly better than trade tariffs.
Along with tariff threats Trump has mused about annexing Canada, rhetoric Trudeau has said is a real thing.
Let's be very clear. Conversations around a 51st state are a non-starter. It's never going to happen. But we have to take seriously what the president is saying.
Trudeau's defense minister joining him in Brussels, striking a hopeful note with allies about that annexing threat.
I do not believe that represents a real threat to us, but those remarks are disrespectful and concerning.
But from Trump's U.S. Defense Secretary, fresh calls that members like Canada do more and spend much more.
The United States will no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship which encourages dependency.
And he echoed recent Trump comments that NATO countries should spend 5% of GDP on defense. That's up from the 2% benchmark Canada's yet to hit.
This is something we have taken seriously, and we agree with all our allies, including the United States, that Canada needs to do more. That's why we are doing more.
The defense minister says the U.S. doesn't spend 5% of its GDP on defense, and that there will be a discussion at NATO about what the level should be. But for now, he's focused on trying to hit 2% as soon as possible. Canada's official deadline is 2032. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Brussels.
Meantime, all of Canada's premiers gathered in Washington. That's the latest Canadian foray against Trump's tariff threat, and the federal government is busy lobbying as well. The CBC's Katie Simpson reports.
Canada's premiers capping their trip to Washington, their trade mission, with some FaceTime at the White House, meeting with some senior staffers as they push Canada's anti-tariff message. That's really been the focus for Canada's premiers over the past couple of days, holding a number of meetings with American lawmakers, particularly some influential Republicans, as well as some business leaders, as they really try to work a coordinated effort to try and convince the Trump administration to steer away from imposing any tariffs on Canada. It was a similar message from Canada's finance minister and Canada's ambassador to the United States. They too held a meeting at the White House today, meeting with Howard Lutnick, who is Donald Trump's incoming Commerce Secretary.
We started the conversation by discussing our shared priorities around border security and the fight against fentanyl. We also discussed, obviously, our concern around steel and aluminum tariffs and the president's comments earlier this week. But we also agreed to continue the conversations and to be in touch over the next number of days.
One thing that Canada's ambassador to the U.S., Kirsten Hillman, really picked up on is the fact that Americans in this moment, they are aware of some of the frustrations Canadians are feeling in this moment, whether it comes to Donald Trump's comments about Canada becoming the 51st state or the overall threat to the Canadian economy.
Canadians were reacting strongly and in a unified way in the face of a lot of uncertainty coming out of Washington. And I know not just in discussions with the administration, but folks on Capitol Hill, that they have seen this, those who are paying attention to the Canada trade issue. And so my sense is that we didn't need to really, pound the table on that. We can refer to it lightly because it's well understood.
Coming out of these meetings, no one is expecting a breakthrough moment, any sort of a deal to be reached. It's all about the cumulative effect of meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to influence senior officials in the White House to try and convince the president himself to reverse course. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
If U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum are enforced next month, you can expect to see the cost of many everyday goods to go up, including beer and other drinks in aluminum cans. One can printing business in Montreal says it's already getting ready for potential tariffs. Heart Print imports up to 100 million cans a year from the United States. It says it's stockpiling cans now before the possible increase.
If our Canadian government was to put in place retaliatory measures and the same 25% tariffs, these cans that we import from the United States, they would be hit with 25% additional tariffs.
The Microbreweries Association of Quebec estimates each can on the shelf would see a price increase of around 30 cents if tariffs go ahead on aluminum. The World Health Organization is warning of serious impacts on global health after the Trump administration paused U.S. foreign aid.
In Myanmar, almost 60,000 people, most of them women and children, have been left with no access to life-saving services. And we have limited information about the spread of avian influenza among dairy cattle in the U.S. or human cases.
The UN Health Agency says the move has affected programs fighting polio, HIV, and other threats. The U.S. has been the biggest donor for the WHO with nearly $990 million for 2024-25 alone. Last month, after taking office, U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the pause while the programs are reviewed. Along with the U.S. aid freeze, Trump also moved to withdraw the country from the WHO. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets with Donald Trump tomorrow, aiming, like many world leaders, to stave off U.S. tariffs. But there's a second thorny issue: U.S. deportation flights sending Indian nationals back to their homeland. The CBC's South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has the story.
The protests have been loud across India, the fury deep over Indians living illegally in the U.S. deported, handcuffed and shackled. But it's pain and worry that dominates at this home in Punjab. Swarn Singh says they're adjusting to having their only child forced back to India. Akashdeep sent this video to his father from the U.S.-Mexico border.
This is right when he crossed.
The 23-year-old took the infamous illegal donkey route, as it's called, into the United States, and then no word for 12 days, until the family realized their son was deported on an American military plane. We spent so much money, and still my son wasn't able to settle abroad. Our livelihood is gone just like that.
Okay. 2 acres.
Singh shows me what they sold to get their son to the States. Not just land, but buffaloes, jewelry, a tractor. Heavily in debt, even making chai is a chore for Akashdeep's mother. I'm on antidepressants. I can't see how we'll ever repay our loans, Daljit Kaur tells me. With India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington to visit his good friend Donald Trump, Singh thinks there's hope for others. Prime Minister Modi needs to tell Trump, stop sending our children back, he says, stop crushing their dreams. It's unlikely on such a tricky issue. India is keen to show the Trump administration they're open to taking back illegal migrants. The goal for New Delhi is to avoid punishing tariffs or a trade war.
There's fear here mixed with resignation that the deportations will ramp up, even if Modi and Trump discuss the issue at length. Many here know someone who's taken the illegal route to the United States.
At this college, deportation is what many are talking about.
People are so much worried about this as they are afraid of going there.
I think many Indians who are in America illegally will be deported, this student says. The illegal route is a bad idea, he warns. Even as a second military plane full of deportees is expected to land in India as early as this weekend. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Amritsar.
Auto thefts are going down. That's according to a new report that's just out. The number of stolen vehicles continues to decline nationally after recent historic highs. Nicole Williams has the details.
So we have in this vehicle, we have this little device.
This Toronto auto shop specializes in installing anti-theft devices, and business is booming.
Our demand definitely increased in the last few years, quite a bit than before.
For years, personal vehicle thefts in Canada have skyrocketed, losses of some $1.5 billion in 2023 alone.
A lot of customers come over after the insurance is asking them. If not, they're going to increase their price.
But after years of heist hikes, last year thefts went down. New data show a decline of more than 18% nationwide, the largest in Ontario and Quebec.
In 2024 is the first time we've seen a decline in the last 4 years, so it is very promising.
It's in part because of an Ontario Provincial Police task force dedicated to tracking down stolen vehicles, but also because of beefed up security at Canada's borders, notably at the Port of Montreal.
From the Port of Montreal and Ontario-based, they're going to Europe. And then from there, they can go anywhere across Europe.
This inspector says the criminal enterprise is low risk and high reward. Canadian vehicles often worth more in other countries.
It's a very high profit crime that they then use to fuel other crimes, drugs, importation, exportation, firearms trafficking, and in some cases terrorism.
While the law enforcement strategy has made a difference, it's also expensive, and auto thefts remain high.
We still have to get to the prevention phase, making the vehicle harder to steal in the first place, really to have sustained decline in auto theft.
Transport Canada is expected to announce new rules for automakers sometime this year to modernize safety devices designed to stop thieves from being able to drive off. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, you may be seeing and hearing a lot of people coughing and sneezing around you. We'll tell you why more people are sick with the flu and landing in the hospital compared to years past. That's coming up after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. Doctors across Canada are racing to treat patients showing up with the flu. Numbers are up across large parts of the country. And as Jennifer Yoon explains, it's late in the season, but cases aren't showing any signs of slowing down.
Flu season usually winds down this time of year. But behind these walls in a Niagara, Ontario hospital, the number of flu patients doctors are treating is on the rise.
We haven't seen influenza like this since at least the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic.
We're seeing more beds being occupied. We're seeing more ICU beds needed for flu cases.
Across the country, roughly 1 in 5 flu tests are coming back positive. British Columbia and Quebec are also being hit hard. Quebec reported over 4,600 cases last week, including intensive care treatments for some kids.
This is basically influenza doing what influenza does. It just happens to be that we're seeing a lot of cases right now.
Researchers say this year's flu vaccine is moderately effective, reducing the risk of infection by about half. Plus, they're seeing more cases with worrying variants.
Those variants show some mutations that are known to facilitate viral escape from immunity. In other words, may be contributing end of season toward greater mismatch with the vaccine.
There's another downside to this relatively late flu season.
Most people get their flu shots early, September, October, November, and you really only get 3 months of really strong protection from symptomatic infection. So when the peak comes later, like February, most people are past that 3 months of protection.
And because the virus hasn't peaked yet, this message from public health officials for those who haven't yet.
It's not too late to get vaccinated.
Experts say a 50% reduction in the chance of getting sick with the flu is better than none at all, especially for those most vulnerable to severe illness, older folks, the very young, and pregnant women. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
There's been a lot of sniffles around the office, and I don't know if it's just because it's so cold out or if it's actually sickness, because man, oh man, we've been dealing with this for what seems like a very long time already.
I just want to lay in bed.
Right?
Under a blanket.
Call in cold.
I don't know, but would you rather the cold in the sun or the snow that other parts of the country are getting?
Probably the cold.
Yes. Some parts of our country in for quite a blast of winter. Let's start big picture here. I'll show you the watches and warnings that we have across North America. So there's quite a spread to talk about here. So the southern states into parts of the Gulf Coast here. This is a tornado watch that's in place. We have winter storm warnings, winter storm watches, winter storm warnings into the east coast of Canada, weather advisories, and of course, extreme cold warnings. What I want to focus, though, is what's happening in eastern parts of the country with these winter storm warnings. So the greater Toronto area, some snowfall warnings mixed into there as well. We're expecting quite a bit of snow over the next several days into parts of southern Ontario and right through into the Maritime provinces. So here's that first wave as it makes its way into southern Ontario. There's another system in behind this that will bring yet more snow into Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes as we get through the weekend. Timing this out, and if you look at some of the colors here as we get into the day on Friday here, some of these pinks and purples, this is 10 to 15 centimeters of snow in a swath from Toronto right into parts of New Brunswick. And there's more to come after that. So, as I said earlier, take your pick. Do you want the heavy snowfall and the wind or the snow and the cold temperatures? That's the trade-off that you kind of get through the winter months here on the prairies. This is Roman, ready for a cold walk tomorrow morning. Thanks, Kathleen, for sending this picture in. You can send yours to talkback@cbc.ca. So minus 30 first thing in the morning in Winnipeg. Southwest winds at 10. Doesn't take a lot of wind at temperatures like these, though, to really drive up that wind chill factor as we get into the afternoon. Minus 19 for Winnipeg. Maybe we get to minus 18 late afternoon, early evening, but I've got us at minus 19 for now for a daytime high in Winnipeg. Overnight temperatures, yeah, minus 35 for Brandon, Verdun. Feeling closer to minus 45, minus 46 with the wind overnight tonight. That's frostbite on exposed skin in minutes. Not as cold into the Red River Valley, into eastern, northwestern Ontario, but certainly looking at some very cold conditions in the north as well. Minus 36 in Thompson, starting at minus 34 tomorrow in Thompson, warming up to about minus 23 by the time we get to the afternoon hours, minus 22 in Norway House in Grand Rapids tomorrow afternoon. In the south, yes, there's that cold start tomorrow morning. We start to get things going by the time we get to the lunch hour, minus 21 in Winnipeg by lunchtime, warming up to minus 19 by the time we get to the late afternoon, Brittany. And temperatures like these, by the way, now 11 degrees below seasonal for this time of the year.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, the path to love is never easy, and it can be particularly challenging if you're in a mixed-race relationship. A new Manitoba-made documentary called Relationship Remix follows the bumpy path of 3 couples navigating the waters of marrying outside your culture. It streams free on CBC Gem starting this Friday, Valentine's Day, and Chris Sharp is the film's producer. He spoke earlier this week to Marcy Marcusa.
Yeah, it's a deep dive into mixed relationships, the good and the bad. And it's coming from, like, I'm kind of navigating the narrative as the host, taking you on a journey to discover is life just as hard to date other races as it was for me? So my relationship wasn't very easy to actually make happen.
Tell me a little bit about that then, your own relationship, because I know you're Jamaican Canadian. Your wife Sonia is Pakistani Canadian, I understand. What were the challenges back in the day, and how's it, evolved?
Well, it was pretty simple. I mean, I met her in Portage Place back in the days when there used to be sand and also, Athletes World, and we just started talking, and she gave me her number. And then the minute she gave me her number, I called her, and then her brother and her parents said, "Don't call here ever again." So that was just the start of it. And at that point, we realized we weren't allowed to date, so we just decided to be friends. But it was really difficult to be friends. So we just kept falling in love, and they kept making us break up over and over and over again. And you'll see a lot of that in the documentary of, like, how much pushback we got from the in-laws, but we still made it work.
What was it like for you? I understand pretty cathartic to actually, years later, you actually kind of bring it up with your in-laws really directly. Like, why were you sort of not in favor of me?
Yeah, it was actually the first time I ever asked them that question in the documentary. So it was very nerve-wracking and a very, very powerful moment. But it was just a cultural thing. It was just, they were just basically looking out for her. And I think, in the Pakistani and in Indian culture, there's, a lot of the parents are really involved in, like, arranging the marriage.
What kinds of cultural similarities end up being explored in this as well? Because you're talking about the challenges, but also the joys of interracial, marriages and couples.
Yeah, like there's a lot of different, I guess you could say, like food, less spicy foods, just the way, that we raise our kids, lots of, discipline and whatnot. There was actually a lot of similarities. So race shouldn't have been a factor, but it definitely was. Just there was a lot of stereotypes in regards to being black, and I guess the parents just needed time to kind of get over those.
How did you incorporate original music into your documentary?
Yeah, it was really awesome. So we got music producers from across Canada, and we took each cultures, mixed them together. The couples got a chance to actually, give the title and get involved and add elements from their cultures, and we just made original music based upon their cultures.
Well, you've been with your wife for now, I think 18 years, right? Like nearly 20 years?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you have advice now for other people that are starting their own relationships and they might happen to be mixed race relationships? Or what have you learned that is valuable to share? Because advice is a big loaded word, right? It feels like a lot of pressure, but what would you share that you think, maybe you wish you had known at the beginning?
I would say to do a little bit of research on the culture and make sure that you're, respecting, because each culture has a little bit of a different way of doing things. So if you do a little bit of research when you're going to date somebody from a different culture, it will go a long way at the end of the day.
How much have we evolved in Winnipeg? It's just interesting because you and I sound like we're about the same age when you're talking about Portage Place and those stores, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And you would never have made a documentary like this, I don't think, as freely back in the day in Winnipeg.
No. Mixed race couples is, as most people can see, is one of the fastest growing, couple combination in the world right now. Things have changed. Right now, it's probably a perfect time to start talking about this just because, the way the world is. I think that this documentary will definitely break down boundaries and start conversations and really take the open the drapes and let people see like what these relationships are like, and it will help a lot of people that may think they're alone out there.
And it's just so interesting that you got couples to even agree to do it, because it's so personal. And then the layers of, you add the parents on both sides, like you said, the families on both sides. It's hard to come forward and talk about things that are like really real to everybody, and families all experience things in different ways. So how did you find the other couples? I'm just super curious that said, yeah, we're going to open up about this. We feel like this is important.
There were lots of couples that wanted to participate. We had people reaching out from the States, Europe, all over the world, actually. Seemed like people wanted to talk. Seemed like people wanted to tell their stories. I think a lot of people, and you'll see in the doc, some people thought they were alone. And but this conversation, I believe this is one of the first documentaries in the world that really kind of dives deep into it. So.
Still ahead, why one Manitoba police department is looking for love this holiday season. Plus, Riley's back with the last check on our forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. An update now to our daily lift from last night. Monty the Giant Schnauzer was named Best in Show at the 149th Westminster Dog Show in New York. The 5-year-old Pooch beat out more than 2,500 canine competitors to become the first of his breed crowned champion. Monty's owner says his competition days are now over and he'll enjoy a well-deserved retirement.
Hopefully somewhere warm. Okay, looking at your forecast for Thursday, we're looking at -19 by the time we get to the afternoon. Mix of sun and clouds in Winnipeg. Wind chill feeling more like -28 in the afternoon, but closer to that -40 mark first thing in the morning. Wind southwest 10, gusting to 20. A bit of a windier one on the way for Friday, -19. Some sunny breaks of the afternoon. -19 on the way for Saturday, -20, 21 for Sunday, Monday. And then there's that slow turn back toward normal as we get to the middle of next week, -18 for Tuesday, -17 with some increasing clouds on the way for Wednesday. Well, 'tis the season for love, and with Valentine's Day approaching, many people are looking for ways to maybe make their love interest feel a little special.
But there's also some people who are looking for ways to get back at their ex, and that has the Brandon Police Service putting out a call saying you may not want your ex anymore, but maybe they do. Here's our Daily Lift.
Hey Brandon, do you have an ex-romantic partner that constantly brags about getting away with crimes? Maybe Mrs. Court has a warrant or two? You want to do something special for them for Valentine's Day? If so, give us a call. Here in the Crowbar Hotel, we have friendly staff ready to greet you. And we provide luxury transportation. We'll leave them pick them up wherever needed. So here at the Crowbar Hotel, they'll be provided with their own private suite. Fine dining cuisine brought right to their private suite. Our friendly operators are standing by to take your call. So Brandon, make their Valentine's Day special.
I don't think you need to book a reservation either.
Very romantic. Very romantic.
So maybe you can help the Brandon Police out and make somebody's Valentine's.
Yeah, maybe.
Have a wonderful night. Stay warm, stay safe. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Have a great evening.